Welcome. This is the March 19th OpenZFS production user call. We have Dan, Andrew, Richard, Jan, Stu, Eva, Greg, and myself, Michael, so far. And just one little tiny point. I was on the My Open Source Experience podcast. I have put a link in the doc. The search of those words will find it. It gives a bit of my history and philosophy, and you may find that nice. The OpenZFS User and Developer Summit is tentatively scheduled for right before Halloween for the traditional days, but we're waiting to hear from a few folks on if they can attend, key people who are always there. And this crossed my desk. There was, in complete random researching, I found this notion of designing storage pools. And let me put the link in the chat where this takes us. I cannot say. It was abandoned and it was for OpenZFS. So someone went to a bunch of trouble to describe what they had in mind. I see using AWS as an endpoint. Import bucket name. Okay, fascinating. Uh, Conclusion. This is a proposed design. And then there's a video call or two describing that. So I have no opinion on this, but I am curious about what both motivated it, what ideas can come out of it. And I don't know if any of the people working on it are still interested, but it was fascinating. I like when people are thinking of new ways of doing things. Any ideas, questions, or concerns there? With a few links on ZFS on object storage. Yeah. So it's an interesting read. So I have a need for determining who is using what on a very stale old storage server. And it's running Samba now, and I suspect that the 5 or so users are using 2% of it in about 10 directories. So my thought was to kick off Samba auditing and just watch who does what. Occasionally I do. I think it's what version of Samba? It's currently running 4.16, and I'm looking at 4.19. 4.20 is a bit stoned on FreeBSD, periodically crashing, which came up recently.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you're in the 4 realm, you should be okay.
Fantastic. So I've heard narratives of like, oh my gosh, the overhead is so bad that it'll be unusable. And then someone found about 20% overhead, and then they also found that, oh, it works just fine. I've also heard comments that you should be using either external syslog for unspecified reasons, and I would simply love to hear what experiences people have.
It will melt your boot drive.
It will melt your boot drive. Okay, I like that. I
Well,
like the
for, th for that level of use, it probably won't be a problem, but best practice, you don't want your your root drive, which is where most everyone has their logs,
right. Good point.
is melting it. And even the SSDs, we're seeing failure rates higher than I expect
Hmm.
uh, on very heavily logged systems. So your mileage may vary. However, best practice, put it on something that is a logging server designed for it. And it's not a thing, so you want it to be at least passively secure and
Mhm.
So this sounds like if you write it, so the question is probably, are you facing a workload more like copy a bunch of big files around, or is someone interactively browsing through and, I don't know, robocopying around?
I purely want to see where users are hanging out to see what needs to remain available to users and what other stuff that some of which I know is complete ancient archive junk can be just hidden away and they'll never notice. None the wiser.
The other thing is, if you only need to know that something was touched, maybe just enabling A time is enough, and then comparing A time changes to see what was
This
accessed.
is true. That is the Unix way.
I know that A time kills performance because every read implies a write, but it would not kill it as badly as
That doesn't.
blocking on writing to a USB stick with synchronous writes. If you have that stupid model of, oh, my operating system drive is just, I don't care performance, so I can't sacrifice even a SATA port for the operating system. And then, yeah, oh no, my USB stick died when I actually tried using it as a general purpose storage device. Who would have guessed? Joking aside, so if you have just bulk copy operations and overhead isn't too bad. And the other thing is that you can create a secondary small pool if you have a disk.
Naturally.
And then you won't burn through whatever sync write IOPS you have,
Of course.
committing your log writes. Or you could be a bit naughty about things, create a data set with a big record size and sync disabled, so that you just have streaming writes.
Best effort. Yep. Or in this case, because it's not for like auditing purposes, it's just a smoke test. Even a tempfs would be clever if I can balance the logs I care about with the disposable ones
Yes
for the
and
sniff.
no, because the nice thing about a sync off data set is that it's still able to spill to disk when you have memory pressure.
Okay.
Whereas tempfs is just wired down memory. Because a tempfs has no backing storage.
Correct.
The only way to free up the wired memory is to delete the files.
No question. No question.
And the other thing you could do with syslog or something like it is to, instead of logging to a file, log to a pipe and immediately apply some kind of filter so that you don't have to write anything to disk. You just stream the syslog lines into your pipe filter, and the filter does all the aggregation and only periodically dumps the change to the aggregates or whatever.
Nice.
Or
Yep.
if it noted, or it just learns basically which trees, which user accessed, and whenever there's a request, it just rounds it up. It says, okay, now this path has been written to, this path has been written to a red from, and you only track basically the highest directories in the tree or something, and then it's a tiny bit of state. So if you can do the map and reduce in a pipe like that, you have to store minimal data and only, periodically dump the inferred state.
Thank you. Stu, I've heard that it's all or none. I can't simply say log only reads, only change directories, only something.
It depends on the version.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look, but there's some granularity. But you can also, if you're doing through syslog, you can scrape out reads in the syslog ng macros or whatever you got, whatever you're using.
So there's also the JSON logging format, which is probably easier to filter with something like JQ. And when you run SMBD in the foreground, you can have it logging to standard out. Which, if you use something like run it or whatever kind of service supervision, these often support, or all of the decent ones, including daemon tools, run it, FSx, and so on, support basically checking the log rotation on every write so that you never will just fill up your logging partition. Instead, it will just very quickly rotate, because if you have a single writer and the log quotation is part of the writer, then you don't have to deal with an external hourly cron job to do the log quotation, which is just historical, um, yeah, accident which has been
Hmm.
ossified in how default syslog-d works on BSD.
Okay. I have not heard if, say, the NFS logging on FreeBSD that Alan Jude bumped into got any review. He's not quite at home this week. No worries. So anyway, thank you for that feedback. I just need to get my feet wet and I'll report back what I find. Steve, you're famous. Amazon ZFS feature product service came up last week, and I had no recollection because I didn't host the call, and someone did the homework and found it in the minutes. Are you still using that product? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
Amazon, remind me again.
It's their ZFS product, which has a clever name like ZFSx or something. I can try to find that mention. The idea was, oh, how about we run Samba there? And then it's like, oh, no, we can only use it for internal AWS things.
So I am not using their product. We did look at it.
Okay.
Did talk to the Amazon guys at the summit, and they sort of clarified for me who their target audience is, and I'm sort of not a good fit. I think their target audience is probably large IT groups that need to shift their current data store into the cloud, but still, still basically have all the functionality they need.
Okay. So the FS users on-prem going to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Or what was it? $70 a terabyte or something? Anyway, the other comments were you can only send block level replication inside AWS, not from it. So I'd be curious how you migrate to that if the emphasis is migration. Did they, I don't know, is there a ZFS, what, Snowball or whatever the little disk pack is that you can truck around? And oh, thank you, Jan. And there's a comment. Nothing about the JSON. Let's see. I'm catching up with the chat here. Oh, and there's this example of logging. So let's circle back briefly. In the big picture, that's a hot topic, and I'm happy I had a use case, and it's a simple one where it's low traffic. It's just a smoke test, but every insight is appreciated there. Oh boy, let's see. An example of Qumulo logging. And yes, Greg, your Qumulo experience is definitely appreciated. Oof. Test, obviously. Test. I'm gently.
Tap that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was all right with it on the chat there. I did change some of the stuff that's important, but whatever. Yeah, I just want to say, if you'll notice in there, you'll see that it's catching both Samba logs and NFS logs.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Yeah. And then the next one, the next comma separated value there is the action. So you see FS read metadata and FS read, and those are all the different things. So if they deleted it, it would show that as an unlink or copy. It'll show all that stuff. Yeah. So even if you open the file, like even if you drag it from one folder to the other, it'll have that. Even if you drag it off of the file system or make a copy of it to your local desktop, it will still audit that you opened that file to copy.
Okay.
And it read it all. Yeah. So.
And is this purely Qumulo format or is that Samba format?
This is a proprietary Qumulo login format, I would imagine.
Okay.
I mean, they may have adhered to some industry standard, but I've never seen logs using the FS_read data as a metadata and all that stuff before. So
Got it. Cool. Well, that's something to compare to.
yeah.
And for what it's worth, Stu, if you have a snippet of the Samba logging, the group might want that. And it was Daniel who's just arrived who was curious about Amazon's product. Daniel, we talked about that ever so briefly. And if you can only replicate within AWS, it's like, well, how do you ingest all that data you want to get up there? I'm curious.
Yeah, data sync. That's their official. Is their rsync alike. It seems, but I would love to talk to anybody who has some experience with that. And I do think there was somebody on this call.
That's Steve, who is here currently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you arrived just after we talked about it.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, I'm going to send some love notes to Steve because I've got questions.
Okay. So, Steve, you cool with that? And any pressing
Oh,
questions?
yeah, sure. Just drop me a line here.
Oh, and of course, the FS diff. That's a really good point. Actually, dude, Jan, you get a point for that one. In my case, ZFS diff might be perfect, and it's just a different way of looking at it. Because I don't care who did it, I just want to care where users in general are spending their time on the file system. Well played, well played. Okay, so you two can connect offline, but yes, we identified where that conversation took place and reach out with email and chat directly if you need to find each other. Dan, in service of your data protection, it sounds like you had a UPS just cut out on you. Was it batteries died and the UPS died and stopped even providing, say, power cleansing and surge suppression?
To be fair, I think I kind of started abusing it around around January or so. I may have miswired the batteries in the external battery module, and so that may have fried the main unit. Regardless, the UPS I've had for 5 years, and it was a used unit when I got it. And examining the error code indicates perhaps a blown capacitor, and I didn't want to be bothered doing that sort of hardware repair. I just ordered a new one. And by new, I mean, it's not a used item that's new to me. It actually was long out of, it's no longer sold. It's a model of Eaton UPS. It's no longer sold. It's the 5PX. But I managed to get one delivered for about $500. So it's sitting in the basement now, happily going.
Who is our super clacky? Is that you, Steve? I'm going to meet you. I see some.
Yep, he's gone.
That prompted a recent suggestion of Nut Scanner, which I've not tried, but apparently it will. A Nut Scanner, no. It will probe a USB or perhaps any serial UPS for the protocol it speaks, which I thought was kind of cool because now that they've renamed product lines in various ways and had acquisitions and this and that. And I do have a mid-range cyber power with like pretty LCD display, not the cheapy ones at, say, large big box stores that I did try, and they last about 2 uses. And no, thank you. I don't want to do the low end ever again. But this one is a lot more manageable with the one single question of why does their management card cost more money than the UPS? It's like over $300, which is, yeah, no, thank you.
Grab it off eBay.
It was about $20 less off eBay. That was a shocker.
Oh, is that all?
Oh. Is that all? It was like the
Market
unit's like 250. The card is more than that. Yes, Jan?
Market segmentation.
I suppose, but still, like not cool. And cleverly, there are people making their own interface boards. So it's definitely a serial interface, which is obviously a lower tech strategy, and I'll try to find that link, but it was something cool I found in the process. Go ahead.
Some of the old UPS is just abuse with serial port status lines. to only give you basically power good, running of battery, warning, just through status pins on a DB9.
Okay.
So those, of course, are easy to interface with, but I suppose you want to know the current voltage, temperature, and so on.
Things like SNMP was interesting, and whatever's not too proprietary to the vendor. And of course, the communication of like, hey, cry for help, power's going away, it's been over a few minutes.
SNMP, security, not my problem.
Okay, well, other forms of interfacing with it. And there's a pretty picture from Richard. That is what? Is that a phone app to manage your... Ooh, pretty. Are you willing to describe what this is? I could perhaps drop it in the doc. I hope that's nothing proprietary. It's just a pretty little phone app here. I'm guessing phone with a call in the background. It's huge.
Looks very phone.
Yep, a bunch. Looks like Android, yes. But also
Looks like somebody needs to
integrations
charge the
into Home
phone.
Assistant for a bunch of UPS which can then become your control plane if you want it to be. Because it also supports generating push notifications and so on.
Jan, have you done
It's a fairly
any...
heavyweight proxy, of course, if that's all you're using it for.
Even rescaling. Have you done any UPS communication with the MikroTik ecosystem?
Didn't see any need for it yet.
Okay.
Why?
Oh, it's...
I mean, the devices
know
are
it's doing it
supposedly power loss safe and come back when power is up. And what good is it to have special integration into your routers? They should be the last thing to die. And should run until the power cuts out, right?
Correct, but if the switch were to talk to the UPS, then it could have some space to do some intelligence,
I think
notifying
supported,
devices and sending, say...
but if you want full functionality, you can expose the serial ports on models which have one to a container.
Oh, you could hijack. That's cool. Cool, thank you.
And there's also a feature which I call some kind of proxy port or something, where you basically allow a special SSH locking credential to be connected to a physical serial port or a USB to serial adapter, which they recognize as something they've used to sell, like this. So that they then show up as a close enough console port. Yeah. So that you SSH into the MikroTik and end up on some serial port, so that you can use it as a jump host to some serial-only device.
Any other completely wild UPS stories and tips based on experience? $330. Yeah, no, thank you. And there are different generations of them, so you have to watch that. It's not the ecosystem I'm after, I guess, but the 1U UPS 9 inches deep was kind of attractive for a network rack. Anyway, other topics.
I used to have an old 4U unit, but I didn't keep it when I moved because it was like, about as heavy as me.
Exactly. 4U UPS. That's it's called a power wall, right?
Yeah, and it also had the option of hooking up external battery shafts.
Cool.
So it was like 3-point-something kilowatts continuous.
Has anyone experimented with the new lithium ion and lithium ion plus some extra letter UPSs?
Yeah, lithium iron phosphate batteries are probably the gold standard because they are so they have such high cycle endurance. So they will basically stay above 80% for any foreseeable lifetime of the device.
One would hope.
And compared to lead acid batteries, you can deep discharge them without hurting the battery, so you
Nice.
can go way below 50%, like to 15 or so, without damaging the cells. And for any useful capacity, you will have plenty of current capacity, but they're more expensive.
There you go. Although for the price of replacing batteries every, what, 3 to 5 years, it might work out.
Yeah, but
Love to see that map.
again, if
Or
you
recycling
overbuy
costs.
your capacity and then they degrade to 70%, what's the harm for a stationary home lab or something? It's not like your home lab has to be very lightweight unless you happen to live out of an RV.
Looking at Rod. Anyway, that's a bit off topic for OpenZFS. Other ideas, questions, topics? I'm trying to find that BYO card, but I'm not succeeding. But it was nothing too life-shattering, earth moving. With a watt box. I don't think the watt box is it. Anyway, anything else? I sense we will talk about libzfs at the upcoming summit in October. Are there any broader long-term topics that require some science and research in advance that we want to get on the radar for that?
I guess whoever wants to advocate for change should have a position or at least an informed opinion on whether this code should be cleaned up or basically a replacement should be written or what's the deal is. I'm still kind of partial to the idea of just having a kind of ZFS as a service where you add to the ZFS in zpool command a serve subcommand where it will just accept commands on standard in and will send the replies out on standard out, maybe with JSON encoding, so that you don't have to interface with the library. Instead, you have a little API server with lower startup cost. Because that would also kind of solve the problem of interfacing with ZFS from arbitrary languages, because if your language doesn't have a library to send and receive lines of compact JSON and deal with that, then maybe you're not a programming language, but someone's toy.
Not wrong.
Which is fine, but
well, yeah.
So for any language this would avoid, even for stuff like Erlang or something, it would solve the problem of having to have C code in your process, which is not part of your runtime.
Noted. Other broad topics beyond libzfs?
And it would also sidestep the problem of promising ABI or API compatibility by making it a protocol instead of a library interface.
Interesting.
And you would basically just pass through the command line interface, which already has, at least implicitly, the stability guarantees that users will yell at you when you change the meaning of, I don't know, ZFS list in ways which break all the scripts, so that you can only extend it in a backward compatible way. But of course, that's not always acceptable answer, that you just run ZFS serve or whatever and get the API service.
Okay, noted.
But if you add a few high-level commands to it, which wouldn't make sense unless it is an API service, then
let's brainstorm that elsewhere.
The problem goes away.
I want to see your wish list and do work with Rob on that. Steve and Stu and say Greg, who participated quite a bit. Any conversations to continue from last year? And I can even scroll up to the topics that are hiding in here. What do you know? Oh, look. Yes.
The
Stu.
benchmarking will always be there.
Perennial. Okay.
As hardware changes, as software changes, we need to be able to benchmark.
Do you have any new nifty hardware that stands out in some way? For example, note I've been discussing with various people about this nifty new MikroTik NAS that is intending to be like a NVMe over Fabrics device, and I thought, what the heck are they doing in that territory, short of the fact that that's really close to networking and latency matters, etc. So, do you have any new hardware that may fit into that mix? Always benchmarking.
I mean, other than what Seagate and Western Digital are coming out with the larger drives with different buffer sizes, multi-head and all that kind of stuff.
I'll rephrase that. Do you specifically have any new toys?
I do not personally.
Okay, cool. Note the new
the last we tested some of the 30 terabyte Seagate drives a couple months ago, and they were as performant as the 24s were. So
okay. Point of order as a Latvian, I'll call it MikroTik, but there was a video that used AI to give a voice, and it called it Mikrotic, and it took me a while to realize what the heck Mikrotic apps were, but they were MikroTik APs. Like, thanks, guys.
That's fantastic.
It's like, what?
Mikrotic.
Oh, Mikrotic. It's like,
So
oh.
instead of MikroTik APs, you had Mikrotic apps.
Correct. That's exactly it.
Okay.
It's like, what the heck?
Next, I'll start doing spell check on us.
Okay, then necrotic abs. Yes, that describes my abs. Other topics, or should we just call it good, nice and short and sweet? I've got a lot to say on tomorrow's Beehive call, but now is not the time or place. Should I pick from the list? Daniel Bell, you're unmuted. Hold on, reading my reviews on 40 gig over the SFP. Okay, noted. Would you like the honors? I'm more than happy to stick around a little bit.
Like and subscribe.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone. I'll be around a few. Let's call it good as the official meeting, and I wish you a great remainder of the week. It is 38 after UTC. Thank you, everyone.